Well, it's hilarious, but it's also sad. It's
It is.
What they think of the average person. Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians, lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Of course, we're like everywhere else in the big college towns, have riots breaking out on college campuses and peaceful protests, too. That does happen, by the way. We couldn't do this without the people joining us today, our viewership. If at any time you want to interrupt us, go ahead and hit that Rumble rant, and we'll read your comment live on air. And joining me, as always, is Mr. MAGA Jesse. How you doing there, buddy?
Doing great, yep. We've got some big things to update people on with these endorsing conventions and Senator Nicole Mitchell, and we've got a very good, very exciting guest here today. So I'll let you introduce him here, Jake.
I will be so excited to do that, reading your comments at home and Rumble rants. None other than the lovely Bridget. How you doing, Bridget?
Doing great. We've got Tucker91 says, good afternoon, everyone. Mary Kay says she's excited for today's show, and good afternoon. And Napkin 8 is with us saying, let's keep calling out the rhinos.
Running
Amen.
the dials, Mr. Deep State himself, Dawson. How you doing, Dawson?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty well. I'm very hungry. That's all I got.
You should eat. Maybe it's my responsibility to make sure he eats before the show. Thank you to our sponsors today, Alpine Cabinetry East St. Cloud, Warren Wessel of Warren Wessel Realty. If you're looking for a home, you want to buy or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. And if you're buying a home, the good guys, the libertarians, the conservatives over at John Galt Mortgage Company, let them give you a quote on financing your home at johngaltmortgage.com. We got to have those guys on the show. They're awesome. All right, Royce White, thank you for coming to our studio. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
You're running for U.S. Senate.
Yes.
Why the hell would you do that?
I'm a glutton for punishment.
I guess so.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like
Amy
it.
Klobuchar. People don't believe that you could beat Amy Klobuchar. And the way I look at it is, yeah, you're not going to beat her if you're just a standard run-of-the-mill Republican that doesn't stand for anything.
Yeah.
Now, anyone that has never watched your show, which I think you're on Rumble and YouTube, all that stuff,
Yeah.
you don't really hold back. That's actually why I think a lot of people wanted to have you on this show, why we were interested in having you on the show. You speak very bluntly on some issues. But tell me, what is the reason you're running? Like, if you had to pick that one issue, that one thing that's getting you to do this, what is it?
One word, huh? One issue. Uniparty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
I mean, I
Explain that
guess
a little bit more.
I guess I understand the Uniparty in a much more intimate way, coming from the black community. So I'm very familiar with how the Democrats have used black people in America as the cornerstone of their propaganda, their platform, and the policy locally and globally, really. And when I came into the Republican Party or the conservative movement, vis-a-vis my mentor and friend Steve Bannon, and running against Ilhan Omar, or running for Congressional District 5 in 2022, I got a firsthand look at the Republican Party. Now, it's not that I didn't already know the Republican side of the Uniparty. I just had never seen it from the inside. And now that I see it from the inside, there shouldn't be an election that goes by where somebody doesn't stand up to the Uniparty on both sides of the aisle. Probably few or far in between people to do it on the Democrat side, but there are some that are trying to do it on their side as well, much more uniform in their thinking on that side of the aisle. But the Civil War is broken out in the Republican Party, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because there are fundamental differences of belief, what's important and what it means to be American. So that's why I'm running. I mean, really. I mean, Amy is as much a run-of-the-mill uniparty politician as you could possibly find. She says all the right things. She presents the right way. She knows to do the retail politics, and in the end, she'll sell you out. She has sold us out, the whole country. And she's put a smile on while doing it. And some people believe it. Republicans believe it. That's the scary
There's
part.
crossover voters with her. It's interesting, isn't it?
Probably more than anywhere in the country, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why I ran.
Right.
The referendum's not on. And I said this at the convention, but it's worth it to say again. 2024 isn't about me. And I think we get that wrong with politics all the time. I think politicians get that wrong with elections. What are your ideas? What do you stand for? The election's not about you. It's a referendum of we the people on the way that on the way America is.
Right.
So I think a lot of politicians get scared of running because they don't want to lose. You know, they don't want to look bad. They don't want people to think that they weren't successful. And you get a lot of that because a lot of these people who run for office are carted in and ushered in by the establishment and the special interests and all the verticals. And Joe Frazier's one of them, worked at a bank, worked with the military. There's enough special interest between those two industries to go around for a few millennia. So people,
Joe Frazier being the other candidate in the Republican nomination.
Yes, for Senate.
I'm not sure everybody knows that actually at this point.
But, my point is that people are afraid to run for office. People would be afraid to run for. Look, the two people I picked, right? I could have picked to run anywhere. I could have moved somewhere and ran in a district that's America First and had a seat in the Congress.
Yeah.
It's not about that. There's no sacred honor in that. There's no, I picked Ilhan and I picked Amy because if the people of Minnesota want to be represented by that, that's what they get. You get the government you deserve.
How do you beat the uniparty? Because the way I look at it, and I totally agree with you, it's a big problem. When you have Tom Emmer and Amy Klobuchar both voting to give $61 billion of our tax money to Ukraine in a quagmire, it's never going to be solved. It's actually just equating to more deaths of innocent people. How do you break that up when you go to Washington, D.C., if you go to Washington, D.C.?
Filibuster.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not be fooled here. I could win and go to the United States Senate, and Kerry could win, Kerry Lake in Arizona, and Trent Staggs could win in Utah, and we could get the guy to win there in Michigan, and it's still going to be 4 to, I don't know, 7, whatever, it's still going to be a very small number of America Firsters.
Yeah.
But the hope is that the political arena becomes a place where people stand up and say the things they really believe, and that platform, because being in politics is a platform in and of itself, right? Or at least it should be.
Yeah.
Except when everybody kind of just runs behind and toes the line, the establishment line.
Yeah, most people aren't even being truthful when they.
Of course,
that's why I wanted to have
yes.
you on the show, because it's like, love them or hate them, controversial or not, you're going to
Well,
tell me probably what you think.
I don't know what's to hate. I mean, look, and I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination, and I do fly off the handle and use profanity, and it's my opinion as being a Christian my entire life. I was baptized a Catholic, and being in that community, it's my opinion that the church has become one of the greatest safeguards of the establishment's agenda.
In many regards, you're right about that.
Yeah. I mean, look, the 501c3 status, all the pastors and preachers who are afraid to talk about politics because the government will come in and make them pay taxes. And even individually, people, everyday people, good, God-fearing, God, family, country, American citizens are more tied to the idea that their Christian identity is more about a thing like profanity versus making sure that the LGBTQ doesn't capture our kids' minds in the schools. And we don't see those issues as being equal footing, but we have much more opinion and passion about the profanity because it's more close to us, right? It feels more personal. It feels like we could do something about it. It's the stuff that we feel we can do something about that people like me are running to try and impact.
And, I think you had a great answer there with the filibuster. I think that's important because if you look at what's going on with the Ukraine money and all this foreign wars, that wasn't even talk in the Senate. There was no senator who had the guts to do that. There was no one with a spine who was saying, I'm willing to filibuster this thing, stand on the Senate floor for 10, 12 hours and just continue to belabor the point, because that was what was necessary to be able to hold this thing up. So it sounds like you've already got the tactical mind necessary when you go into the Senate that there's these parliamentary rules and procedures that you have to follow, but you can utilize them and benefit, for your benefit and for, the America First movement.
Filibuster for 10 days if need be.
Yeah,
I mean, back when the country was founded, and we got to talk about this schism that's happened in this party and in this movement about 1945 versus 1776. And when did America begin, and what is America's foundation? I hear conservatives all the time.
45. Why are you picking that date out?
Well, that's the date of the post-World War II Democrat liberal order.
Gotcha.
That's the standing philosophy of American politics and all foreign policy.
Certainly, America's changed forever. I mean, we were more of a modest country before then, and okay. I just want to make sure that's what you're.
Yeah. So, and my point is, when the country was founded, the politicians were much more willing to stand up on that soapbox in the Congress and in the Senate and filibuster and fight for as long as they needed to until we got it right. There's nothing right about what we're doing in the Ukraine. There's nothing morally right about it, but there's nothing fiscally sensible about it either. It's not politically smart. I had a guy come up at CD3 and say, do you remember the Soviet Union? And I said, I was born in 91. I'm 33. I mean, I know what the Soviet Union was. I didn't witness it. I never was there. But, yeah, I'm familiar with the Soviet Union. And he goes, well, you know who defeated the Soviet Union? Reagan. We have to stand up to Putin. It's like, well, first off, the Soviet Union never really collapsed. We were fighting the Russians then. We're fighting the Russians now. I don't care what you call it.
Well, it's 100% we're fighting them. We're just fighting them indirectly. We're funding a war against them.
Well, and
Which
the
to
guy,
me is an act of war that we do
and the
that.
guy stood up and said, well, I was talking at CD3, he stood up and yelled BS when I said we got to stop funding the Ukraine war. Now, the good thing is that the energy in the party has changed, even in CD3, because they booed him right there on the floor.
Right.
But I stopped him and I said, let him, this is America. Let him say what he thinks. And I asked him, I said, do you think we can defeat the Russians, a strategic defeat the Russians? He goes, I think the Ukraine can. Well, why can't they spend their own money then?
Right.
It's our money. It's our weapons. So stop acting
they're
like they're
not gonna
fighting a
win
war
this
alone.
war. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
Yes, then that too. That's a whole nother issue. But stop. If we're going to pretend that they're fighting this war on their own with supplemental support, they're not.
Right.
Without us, they couldn't fight it.
Right.
Yeah.
That means we're fighting the war.
And if they can't, and this is what really pisses me off, because these guys playing politics of, the world order, which is just really going to kill a lot of innocent people.
Yeah.
If they don't fund Ukraine, it forces Ukraine to concede. Not saying that it's great that Ukraine's going to concede, but this is what's going on in the world right now. And less people are going to die. By the way, historically, Ukraine was part of Russia. So this idea that we're just going to ignore this, we're going to ignore the fact that NATO has continued to move closer to Russian borders. Oh, it's Putin propaganda you're saying, Jake. No, that's the reality. We've been hinting towards this for the last 2 decades. And I know this. I was deployed to Kosovo in the army. Yeah. Like, I saw this literally firsthand. Serbia, which was more aligned with Russia, and then Kosovo, which was aligned with America, NATO, and we had NATO. By the way, we had Ukrainian troops on our damn base. And they weren't part of NATO, by the way, but they were on our base, and they were part of this NATO mission. It's like, well, what makes them NATO? And the whole White House wants them to be in NATO at this point. It's so ridiculous. There's no end in sight, but we're going to spend $61 billion now with money we don't have, which is robbing our future generations. It's not like, I said this on the show, I think on Tuesday or Thursday. It sucks that I have to write in, these checks to the government, April 15th being tax day. But that's not even what's funding the $61 billion. What's funding the $61 billion, and we were talking about our sons before this, is our damn kids.
Oh, yeah.
The purchasing power. Yes, you're right, the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Printing money out of thin air, that's going to hurt our kids.
For sure.
That's what we are. We're $1.8 trillion in the hole. Sorry. Now I want to run for Senate. Dang it, Royce. Now I understand it.
Yes.
I would just run on this damn issue right alone.
Yes.
The fact that we're funding these wars that can't be won with your future generations of children.
It's a simple solution. Look, there are hard things that we have to figure out about this country's future, about society's future, civilization as a whole. There are going to be tough questions. This ain't one of them. This election, the referendum questions in this election are not complicated. To your point about the money tells you that it's not by accident, right? Because our monetary policy, Wall Street, the Fed, how the whole thing works is very sophisticated. They're not winging it. They know exactly what they're doing. If there's one thing that you can point to from the universities and talk about the legitimacy or merit of the science, social science, economics is sort of social science, the economics are as high up the trough as possible. This is hardcore math. You can't take on $1 trillion of debt every 100 days and think you're going to have a country.
So do you think these politicians, the Uniparty, believe that you can do this?
No, of course they don't.
You don't? Okay.
Of course, that's my point. This is how, when I ran against Ilhan, I asked the question, I said, are you ignorant to it or are you in on it? Ilhan's they're all in on it.
Yeah.
They know better. They're not.
I wonder how
they're not that stupid.
I kind of think some of them are. I really do.
No.
You don't think any of them are?
When it comes to money, they all know. When it comes to trans,
You think AOC knows?
Oh, of course she
Really?
does. Absolutely, they told her right away.
I sometimes wonder. I just think that they might be
told her
dumb
right.
enough.
They told her right upon her, and this is what we got to get clear about.
Yeah.
We all kind of want to believe that the plan and the agenda isn't so wicked that it's this well calculated and this far out in front of us. They tell every last one of them upon arrival, this is how it really works.
Right.
You can do WWE cultural wedge issues, but when it comes to the money in the military, there's the way that it works. And you have no say in the way that it works. You go along to get along, or the next election, you'll be out, or worse.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think it's worse? Because I start to wonder, when the NSA spies on our Congress people, which some people think is not as bad because they're spying on us, but I think it's worse when they spy on them because the blackmail of a vote is massive.
Yeah.
And I do believe they probably collect kiddie porn and all that kind of stuff on these people, and
Well,
they're ready
now we're
to
getting
release
to a
it.
dangerous place where people are going to be able to fabricate it. And
There you go.
What American citizen really is going to know? When I hear some of this AI, I really can't tell if that's them or not. And I know that the average American citizen can't either. And I know they'll tell you that they have experts who can decipher whether or not things are authentic. But why would we trust them?
Right.
I mean, we're getting to a dangerous place here. And I don't mean to be fear-mongering or try and do the doom and gloom, but these are real serious issues and real serious times. My point, what I was going to say about the money is Amy and Ilhan and everybody else who's talking about this Ukraine war as though it's feasible, they all know what they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
They know what the end result's going to be. They're all baron robbers. They're thieves.
Right.
And this is what I said about Alpha News when we sat down and talked. I got no problem talking about the crime in black communities. It hurts my heart to see young black men go into department stores and have this radical materialist mindset where they think stealing a Louis Vuitton bag is worth their while, let alone worth the legal trouble or whatever else may come from it. It's just, there's no sacred honor in that. But when your government steals, everybody steals.
Yeah.
When your government's stealing, everybody's stealing. And they're stealing so blatantly, it's almost as though they're mocking you.
Well, I think I've always made the argument inflation most adversely affects the people at the lowest of the economic ladder.
Yes.
And so what did people do? The younger people, certainly the older people who are also there and they're tied to fixed income assets, but the younger people on the lower economic ladder are going to resort to crime. And so it's not a mystery to me when you literally cannot afford to live these days. I mean, young people can't afford to buy homes. They can't afford to, put gas in their car or pay for the car insurance.
Right.
What do you think they're going to do? And this is a big problem.
Well, and let's talk about that in this way. One, as a Christian, there was a remedy to being poor. It was being Christian. Christianity sort of was a buffer of that radical materialism that said you could be poor and still have a meaningful life.
Right.
They stripped the Christianity away while they raised the inflation, and that's really the most malicious part.
That's a great point. The community in itself would take care of it. Yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, not only did they strip the Christianity and cause the inflation, they've monopolized what it is to even live on your own. Nobody can live without the government, and then they set a baseline cost of that.
Right.
Like if I just wanted to go live out in the woods, or if you can't do it. You can't live on your own without the government. It's very, very difficult.
Well, I certainly could, but I got a wife that wouldn't let me do that.
That's true.
In a heartbeat. In the woods alone? Sure, why not?
Well, even think about this. I'm not just saying living out in a tent. Could you go in the woods? Look at all this federal land. Okay. Who does the land belong to?
Should be we the people.
Okay,
but yeah.
that's let's get down to the fundamentals.
Right.
It doesn't belong to us.
Yeah, you can't camp on a federal forest more than 14 days in a row.
Why? If I can go out, if I would be willing to go out and build a house with my own bare hands, build a house from scratch with my own bare hands, I should be able to live in that house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a benefit to everybody, the government, the people.
Well, especially when they let the homeless, take up the sidewalks and they let them run the streets.
Oh.
If we the people can't own our own federal parks, then why do the homeless get to run the streets?
It's intentional.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know if I'd argue that we should do this in national parks, but certainly you don't even own your own property because you still got to pay the man in the end of the day.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, yeah, there's private property. Well, don't pay your property taxes. Let's see what happens.
You're going to jail.
Let's go to some comments here.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. So North MN just says hello. Instant Zipper Bailiff says great guest.
Wait, what was that? Instant super beta?
Instant Zipper Bailiff.
Oh God, I thought you said
Yeah.
super beta. I was like, that's a new one.
No. Billy22 says go Royce. Alley Cat says I got a picture with Royce while at the convention. Tucker says, oh, that's kind of an old comment. So, Brad Ganser says one guy in the CD3 crowd said that Ukraine can win. It's laughable. Tucker says society is not a science. Changed my mind. And then Tucker says he read about a guy getting arrested for AI deep faking a video of his boss being racist.
Yep, saw that.
What's that about?
Interesting.
I haven't seen this.
He basically created an AI video of his boss saying some racist remarks, and they fired him. He actually was, at least I think I read that he was fired, and then they later found out that it was fake after doing the expert forensics that you can do to authenticate, and then he was thrown in jail. I think he got arrested. So.
Dang.
Wow.
Oh, God.
Wow.
But that's how dangerous it's getting. I mean,
is.
you know, AI is the Pandora's, but maybe we don't have to go
All
there.
right, I gotta go deep with you on this one then. So if you know that this problem exists, that this is calculated, which I would imagine then is because they want to destroy America, and they are willing to do things like make sure you don't get reelected, or worse, as you said, why would you run then? You're facing this giant evil.
Yeah.
Like,
Why not? To me, there's no other answer. I mean, to me, look, I got to give you a little backstory.
sure.
I was drafted in the NBA. First of all, I came from the Democrat plantation. Social Democrats, cultural Democrats, the black community all across the country. It's changing now, and Donald Trump is changing it. So any of these conservative rhinos that stand up at these conventions and say, we got to be more palatable to the moderates.
Right.
Well, Donald Trump's as palatable as it is because he's moving all the numbers of polling in what would be deep Democrat places. But I came from that, and then I was drafted in the NBA.
You skipped over part. I didn't tell you this before, but
Okay.
I come from a Cyclones family. So
Oh, okay, yeah. Go Iowa State.
a lot of us watched you back
they
in
had
the day.
they had a great season. Shout
Yeah.
out to TJ Otzelberger. He's doing a great job down there. Love Ames. Love
Yeah.
Ames. Well, yeah, okay. I went to Iowa State, and then I was drafted in the NBA. And what I saw in the NBA, what I experienced firsthand, was how our elites in this country talk about human beings, how they think about human beings.
Yeah.
Behind closed doors. I'm not talking about when they come out with their little piece of paper and talk at the podium and make some press statement. I'm talking about how they speak and how they really feel. And the NBA and pro sports is the watering hole of a global corporate community. It really is. And in that global corporate community, the scam is the same. It's always the same. And so when I fought them about mental health policy, and they basically looked me right in my face and said, yeah, you're right. You're actually right this time. Well, if we followed the science, if we listened to our medical experts, if we followed legal precedents and jurisprudence and the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, all these things they now try and promote for illegal immigrants and the LGBTQ, if we followed those things, we'd have to do what you're suggesting that we do. But we're deciding we're not going to do it because we're bigger than you and we got better attorneys than you. We got more money than you. So that tipped me off to the fact that all of the accoutrement, as they say, all of the window dressings of this corporate community is BS. Then 2020 happened with George Floyd, and I went to the front line. I led the protests. And the Washington Post, they propped me up. They're like, oh, this young rising star, ex-athlete. Same Washington Post that would never do a fair and square story about the NBA and their lack of mental health policy. But as soon as it fit their narrative about race and George Floyd, they were willing to put me on the front page until they realized I was leading protests to the Federal Reserve. Then I went to the back of the bus again. Right?
Wait a second. So
Yeah, go ahead.
what do you mean? You like literally took a crowd and you went out and protested the Federal Reserve?
Every protest, when George Floyd was killed, the first protest we did started at U.S. Bank Stadium, which
Yep.
is an ancillary of the Fed too, really, when you think about it.
Yep. Yeah.
And all of
I
our
remember the Fed.
tax money went to build the stadium.
Right.
And they're going to sell you some dream that is great for the economy. I don't really know, but
Right.
that's a different argument. But our protest started at U.S. Bank Stadium. They went down 7th Street. They cut over and went in front of the Fed, and then we went on we went on across Father Hennepin Bridge and down, and then we ended up going on 35W. And the protest probably had 10, 12, 15,000 people a few times. And we stopped at the Fed every time, and I stopped and I spoke about the Federal Reserve and told people what it was. And first of all, most of them looked at me like they had no clue. And that tells you that the propaganda and the education system in this
Right.
country is doing exactly what it's intended to do.
Yeah.
All these professors, all these Marxist professors at the universities, you think they don't know what the Fed is and what it does?
They think it's legitimate. They think
No,
it
they don't. No,
Well, you don't think so?
They know exactly what it does.
Yeah.
The Marxists know exactly what
I
inflation
know, I'm saying,
does.
but they think it's legitimate. They have a real
Oh,
mandate.
they believe in it.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
No, I mean,
yes.
I had an economics. Well,
Yes.
basically a minor. I was in a business, but we
Yes.
had enough economic
They believe in
classes.
it. That's right.
Yeah, they believe in price. By the way, it's mandated price stability. They believe in that.
So how is it that you get a bunch of college-age white liberals in Minneapolis after George Floyd dies at Black Lives Matter rallies, and I bring them to the Federal Reserve, and all of them are looking at me like I got three eyes, and I say, you know the building we're standing in front of? And they're like, no, we don't. Where are we? Why aren't we at the police precinct down the street? Because the police precinct isn't where the corruption is.
Right.
It's right here on this street. It's 2 blocks away. You don't even know the building. And
Yeah.
as soon as that happened, all of the mainstream media on the left side, all of the Rachel Maddows of the world, I became persona non grata. Then I ran for Congress. So
Yeah.
I was already on the bad boy list before I joined the Republican Party because of what I was saying.
Well, now, I wanted to ask you
Move it
about
on.
policing and everything because, you make some great points there that it's going to take a different kind of candidate, a different kind of message, just like Trump did, that's anti-establishment because that's what really appeals to people. It's not some moderate, weak-kneed rhino BS. And, we haven't had a Republican senator in Minnesota for 15 years, and even then it was Norm Coleman, so it was still uniparty at that point. It's been even longer since we've had a conservative. So on the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd stuff, you would go after Klobuchar in a totally different way than Joe Frazier or any other normal Republican. What would be your strategy? Because Klobuchar, she let off Derek Chauvin plenty of times when she was a prosecutor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the whole scam, and this is what black people, I think, across the country are starting to wake up to, at least in some measurable way, which is why, for the first time in my 33 years of living, the black male vote has swung for a Republican presidential candidate.
Right.
There hasn't been a poll that showed that blacks were more in favor of a Republican presidential candidate in my entire 33 years of living. I don't remember one. Do you remember? Do you
No.
remember?
Well,
Jake?
maybe it's because they see the system's rigged against them
Yes.
and they can relate to that, right?
Yes. So that pendulum's already swinging, and what people are starting to realize is that the Democrats talk a big game. They use blacks, they use Jews, they use cultural identity politics
Yep.
to say they were trying to take care of the good and the well-being of the people. But when you really pull back the curtain, when you pick off the scab and you look underneath it, you find that Amy Klobuchar will talk about protecting black people, black men, when George Floyd gets killed. But she was involved in letting Derek Chauvin go without repercussions. And not only that, she was involved in 3 different cases where there was prosecutorial misconduct in wrongful convictions of 3 other black men
Well,
that are now free.
By the way, and our vice president. Don't want to talk about that, do we?
Crime bill,
Yeah.
super
Right.
predators.
Exactly.
I
I got to
mean,
interrupt really quick for a rumble rant.
Go ahead.
JL Jazz says George Floyd wasn't killed, he OD'd.
yes.
So-
Well, this is the, and let me say this. If you want to play that game, fine. You're playing right into their hands. Look, I'm a professional mixed martial artist. I've been on the mats for 4 or 5 years now. Been a ton of street fights. Seen people die. With the George Floyd issue, was he on drugs? Yes. Was his health already compromised? Obviously. He had coronary artery disease.
Right.
Wouldn't take very much to kill him. Any number of things could kill a man who has severe coronary artery blockage. Okay? He could get a little angry. I mean, we see that where older people just get a little too worked up and they have a
Heart attack. or
major heart
something.
attack,
Right,
right?
right.
So wouldn't it take much to kill him anyway that day, but that's not the question. And it's not, the George Floyd question isn't even about George Floyd, and it's not about Derek, and it's not about what happened that day. Really, it's not even about Amy. The George Floyd question is, how much of your rights are you willing to give up for security?
Well, and Floyd also was out of work because of COVID lockdowns. No one
Absolutely.
ever want to talk about that, right?
Gain of function came from the CCP.
There you go.
Yep.
Now we know. You got censored for saying that before.
Yeah.
I wore a Gain of Function shirt at the Big 3 in the summer, and everybody was like, this guy's crazy. Now we see that Gain of Function surely came from China.
Yeah.
Okay. And the research, and not only that, we probably were working with them together.
Oh, yeah.
So we're partly to blame
Well, I
as
mean,
well.
probably. It seems
Yeah.
like there's a money trail there.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, there
Yeah.
is.
So I just.
But I
think-
want to let me
Yeah,
go
go
back to the George Floyd thing, because this is one of those. The black issue is the race issue is the cultural wedge issue that they're using to safeguard the status quo.
Right.
I mean, that's the protective barrier, And as soon as you say George Floyd, it doesn't surprise me. Somebody jumps right away and goes, "Oh, he died." And I see it on social media all the time. It's like a Matrix response. They don't want you to think about the fundamental ideas here. The fundamental idea is that the government, as it gets bigger, if it's corrupt and it has no sacred honor, you're going to lose more and more of your citizenship and freedom. That's a fundamental fact. The bigger a corrupt government gets, the more militarized it is, the more rights you're going to lose. Now, on the Democrat side, all the people are willing to give up their freedom for bigger government for welfare. That's what it is.
Yep.
Social programs, let's call it.
Now, the modern leftists. I mean, I'm
Yes.
still old enough to remember the old hippie leftists that weren't like that. So the modern leftist is very much like that.
Left is give up your freedom for materialism.
Right.
The right is give up your freedom for security. And that's a problem we're having in
And
this
so
movement.
where does that put people like us? Because I don't recognize either one of them. And it's like there's this, so many issues are gray. It's this big gray zone. And I almost push back at the right versus left paradigm. I don't fit in there. Like I love when people go, well, Action for Liberty is this far right group. And then in the same sense, we'll talk about far right authoritarians. I go, wait, nowhere in my line of thinking is authoritarianism, right?
Right.
So how can these two things exist? I'm just for freedom all the time.
Yes. Well, I don't say, I agree with you. The left-right paradigm is obsolete in many ways, just as much as Democrat, Republican, even conservative, liberal.
Right.
Nationalist versus globalist, now we're getting more closer to the truth, and freedom versus non-freedom, then we're really striking that gold. But again, I say the right just in terms of more mainstream propaganda and how the machine of the RNC and the Republican Party works to propagandize its voting base,
Yeah.
the people who it can email, the people who it can send literature to.
Yeah.
Okay, and in that cohort of people, they want you to think, if you don't give us more of your money, if we don't have more police and more military, whether it's in the Ukraine or downtown Minneapolis, you can't protect yourself. You're in danger. This is not a 1776 idea. In 1776, you have a gun, you and your neighbors are a well-armed militia, and you don't need to wait for the cops to get there for you
Right.
to be protected.
Yeah.
And we've lost that.
Yeah.
And I'm a black guy, and I look at the black community and I go, why are you letting them take your Second Amendment rights?
Right.
They're telling you that the cops are the KKK and they're racist, but they want you to have to call the cops if you're in a crisis. These ideas are contradictory.
Yeah, I think if I could summarize where we're going with this conversation, and I actually really enjoy this because I've actually been waiting for the perfect guest to do this with.
Okay.
And we're guilty of this, okay? We talk about the LGBTQ and the cops issues and stuff like that, and there's this fighting going on. I often think of these things as like almost maybe not planned to the T, but they're planned to keep us busy to be fighting each other. I've said this about the LGBTQ issue for sure. Meanwhile, we're getting robbed. Like our futures are being robbed.
Yes.
So they know what they're doing.
Yes.
Like, the Federal Reserve, I don't give you all the politicians know. I think some are too dumb. Certainly the ones in leadership of the Uniparty do.
They know not to question it, at least.
Well, there
They
you
might
go.
not know how it
That's
works,
something
but they
to be
know
said
not to.
too.
Yeah.
I can't get over the fact. Here's two things I can't get over the fact. Number one, we know that this Jeffrey Epstein worked for somebody. We don't know who he worked for, but we know what the guy was doing.
For sure.
Right? He was getting blackmail material on the world's most powerful. Here's another one that I can't get over. Donald Trump was lied to by senior people at the Pentagon about troop numbers in Syria. How the hell does that happen? Like, if you're not answering to the president, the commander in chief, who the hell are you answering to? So it's very
We know.
obvious there's this deep state behind this whole thing.
Yeah, we know he was answering. We know who Milley was talking to.
Right.
He's talking to China.
Yeah.
He was talking to CCP. Don't worry about it.
I don't even think that's the big boogeyman, although the CCP is obviously a big problem. I don't think there's ruling elite. I think they come from old school money. Elon Musk might be the wealthiest person, not right now, but might be the wealthiest person, but that's new money.
Yeah.
It's the old money, right? The Rothschilds, the people that come from the old school money that have been controlled institutions for a long time that are really planning this stuff. And I think these people are sinister. And I don't think they care about us. And I think in many ways, like you were alluding to with the NBA, which is just another corporation, we're seeing it the fall of all corporations,
Yeah, for sure.
that essentially they like us fighting on George Floyd. They
Yes.
like us fighting LGBTQ. Meanwhile, they are robbing us of our future. And if you need any more proof on it, Tom Emmer and Amy Klobuchar both voted for $61 billion
Yes.
of aid to Ukraine.
I mean, that's why when you ask me what's the one issue, uniparty.
Yeah.
Because again, the uniparty is a microcosm of these cultural wedge issue barriers that keep us in this left-right paradigm.
Right.
And I'm not saying the cultural wedge issues aren't important. I'm on camera going into my son's junior high and filming how ridiculous the LGBTQ regalia is all over the walls. I'm not saying what the LGBTQ has become isn't a huge issue.
Right.
I'm not saying that the issue of race in this country, although I don't think it's as big as they paint it out to be, because I'm from Minnesota and I've been around white people all my life and they tend to love me. and I love a bunch of them. I mean, it's just what it is. My grandmother was Norwegian, I mean, so I'm part white myself. But my point is, I'm not saying those aren't issues. What I'm saying is most people spend more time on those issues because they feel completely unempowered to deal with how the system actually works.
Right.
It feels like you can have an opinion that's worth something, that moves something when it's about race or it's about transgenders or it's about whatever they put on the mainstream news.
Yeah.
But the things that really are how the system works feels so distant from our action that we kind of just want to take our hands off of it.
Yeah, like to the point
Me,
where-
I go straight. I march 15,000 BLM protesters straight to the Fed. Let's reconcile this.
Did you cheer in the Fed? Tell me you said in the Fed. Did you get a chant going?
No, I didn't
man,
get
that
it in the
would've made my
Fed
day.
going. I forgot what we did. We prayed.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
We prayed outside of the Fed. And the white liberals bowed. And, you know, they didn't walk off when they heard Jesus Christ's name. So my point is there's what we see, and then there's the spirit of actually believing in freedom and believing in God and believing in what this country is really supposed to stand for.
Yeah.
We have the winning ideas. There's a reason this country got to where it got to. It's not by chance.
Right.
The ideas were great.
They are, and they still are to this day.
And they still are to this day, but there are too many people who are too caught up in the propaganda to really stand on the truth of the platform.
And to bring in people that would disagree with you on plenty of other things. You know, like you
For
said,
sure.
you're bringing in these people that, you know, there's these white liberals who they don't want to sit there and pray, but, you know, they're figuring out.
They'll be respectful at least.
Exactly. They'll be respectful, and they're learning from you too, because they're saying, I didn't know anything about the Federal Reserve, but this is where the real power is at. So, you know, that's the only way to, and especially with the Republican Party. Joe Frazier's not bringing anyone new into the Republican Party.
Yeah, of course
You
not.
definitely could.
The Occupy Wall Street movement should have grown into an End the Fed movement.
Yes.
The Occupy
Yes.
Wall Street movement was a left movement.
You know, I was on
Exactly.
stage.
But my point is, why didn't that happen?
This is interesting. So we used to be the Minnesota Tea Party Alliance, and we were on this bill. It was basically a end, government surveillance on American citizens in Minnesota. I think it was Senator Brandon Peterson that was sponsoring it. So we're on stage, and so was Occupy Wall Street. And the Star Tribune reporter's like, I just got to ask a question. I noticed there's Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party on the same stage. Any comment to that? And I'm like, well, why is this a big surprise? I mean,
Right.
shouldn't we both be, for liberty and against the big government, And they do. They co-opt the other side, and they did this to the Tea Party too, by the way, which is why we merged and became Action for Liberty, because we didn't want to get co-opted into being pro-state. We're against the state. Well, okay, I got to be careful. They're going to clip that one, aren't they?
Yeah.
In many regards, you understand what I'm saying. We're anti. Well, this is actually really the reason that we oppose every little inch that the rhinos give the Democrats, because it's not like there's just this one big power grab. We did see that during COVID, but it's over time they just keep eroding more of our freedoms to the point where you wake up today and it's 180 degrees different than 1776. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It's because you have the uniparty both agreeing. Maybe the Democrats are going 100 miles an hour and the rhinos are going 60 miles an hour, but we can't go any miles an hour. We got to stop this thing. It's got to be halted. It's got to go in reverse because we are losing this fundamental freedom we have.
Yes.
And meanwhile, they want to keep us arguing and debating and going home and getting fat and lazy watching Netflix.
No, the scary thing is when you look at these politics, when I say the uniparty, Amy and Tom will get up on stage and viciously oppose each other on the cultural wedge issues.
Right.
Tom Emmer will talk about prayer. He'll talk about the LGBTQ. He'll talk about being fiscally responsible. then he'll go and fund a forever war. Amy will get up there and say, Black Lives Matter, we got to be inclusive. These are the issues intended to create the illusion of opposition.
That's right.
When they go back behind the stage, everybody knows you don't question the money, you don't question the military.
That's right.
And that is the single greatest reason this country is where it is. Has nothing to do with the LGBTQ, really.
100%, yes. And by the way, we've got videos where these guys are huggy,
Oh,
hugging.
look at the McCain,
Yeah.
Klobuchar,
Yeah,
and
Lindsey
Lindsey Graham,
Graham.
right
Oh,
there
yeah.
in Ukraine.
Dawson, do you remember in Vegas when Dale asked me, who do you hate more, Walls or David Hand? Or who do you think is bigger? And I go, they're the same person.
Right.
The Republican Party chair and the head of the Democrats, they're the same exact person.
Right.
They're not here for change. They talk differently, but they're not different people in the end of the day. Let's go to the comments.
Brad Ganser says there's no difference between the elected officials and the unelected bureaucrats that have rulemaking authority. This is the base of the deep state.
Yep.
Tucker says Occupy got taken over by the communists. Dr. Lisa is here. She said, what a great show. He's spot on. I could listen to this all day.
Oh, well, let's do this for Dr. Lisa then.
Yeah. Brad says Jake wants to push his view of freedom and liberty on all of us. How dare you support our autonomy and dignity?
Yeah. Well, maybe not for you, Brad.
North MN says, glad you got Mr. White on the show. Guy is legit. Praying for your son's health.
Thank you so much. I
There
appreciate
you go.
that.
And I don't think you're holding back here either. I mean, you got, some views that I think probably upset some people, at least with the George Floyd thing. But
Well,
I like how you come around, dude.
I don't.
because
I don't. Again, it's the George Floyd thing. It's not even the real issue.
Yeah.
Look, here's the issue. And we go back to the Bible, and we got all these schisms. And I get it, and I'm just not afraid to talk about it with anybody. Just like, let's talk about, let's figure it out. What do we really think about this?
Yeah.
I don't care what Jesse Waters tells me to think. I don't care what he
I
thinks.
don't know how anyone listens to that guy, honest to God.
But a lot of people do.
I know, it's
Yeah.
sad. It's sad.
And I'm
And
not
some
getting
people
on.
listen to Rachel Maddow.
I'm not getting on Jesse. I don't know Jesse personally. He might be a great guy. I'm not.
I'm
saying-
just glad more people listen to Joe Rogan. I'm just going to put it that way.
Yes. Yeah. Or my good friend Alex Jones. They say he's
Yeah.
crazy, but
He-
he's
yeah.
been
That
great.
guy's not crazy.
He's
entertaining, I'll tell you that.
He's spoken a lot of truth. But my point about George, again, is because I know, and this is what they'll use. This is how the Uniparty works. The left, Washington Post, Mother Jones, they came out and said that this guy is a fraud because he went from being a BLM leader, activist, to now running as a Republican and being an ultra-right darling.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon, his mentor. I remember Mother Jones had the picture, me and Steve right there. And they can't reconcile how me and Steve could ever be aligned. And then you get the right, the Republicans, whether they be mainstream or they be a little bit, further to the right, and they go, why would you ever even be involved with these protests? Why would I be scared to take my vision, my beliefs about American citizenship into the belly of the beast?
Yeah.
Right.
Why would I be scared to go talk to Democrats about the idea of freedom of speech or the corruption of the gain of function or the necessity and importance of faith? Or, if need be, stop trusting that the police are going to come save you.
Yeah.
I love the clip from the Santa Rosa Police Department where the sheriff, one of the sheriffs says, we would like you to, if somebody breaks into your home, we would like you to shoot them in your home. Save the taxpayers some money. This is an idea that black people should be on board with. You don't want to have to be a victim to the crime that's in your community and have to wait for the cop. There's a common running saying in the black community. The cops are always late. So we talk about that in the black community, and the cops are late for good reason because they're usually ping-ponging around trying to deal with other issues. If that's the case, you need to be able to be in charge of your own security. But it's not just black people. It's your middle America sort of suburban white people as well. They think, the Minnesota thinking should be, if the crime is on the rise with blacks and Muslims or whoever, we don't need more police. We need better Second Amendment rights. I need to be able to own a gun and know how to properly use it. My family needs a security plan at our home.
Yeah.
But when you outsource the freedom of your home through property taxes, through paying for a fluffed up police department or a super loaded military, where the Department of Defense could audit themselves and supposed to find $4 trillion of inventory, but they only find $2 trillion.
Right.
They just take $2 trillion right out the back door.
Rounding error there.
Don't talk to me about freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
That means the freedom talk is just fluff.
Well, and most of what these guys say is fluff, and that's the thing that's pissing people off. And I think more and more. Well, here's another one, and I've heard some of your thoughts on this. The border.
Yes.
How else do you explain this thing that we just have literally an invasion on our southern border? These guys are doing jack shit about it,
On purpose.
Yep.
right? It's got to
On
be.
purpose.
I don't know any other way to look at it.
Hey, look, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, we got borders around our homes. We got gates.
Mm-hmm.
We got gates at the White House. We got gates at our mansions. We have gated communities.
Mm-hmm.
But all of you out there, you serfs, you deplorables, you regular common folks, you get to live with the uncertainty of not being able to document. I said the other day on Twitter, look at how extensive they say the background check should be to own a gun, but you should let undocumented immigrants come live in your home?
Whatever.
Yeah.
The
Anyone
mayor of New York City, Adams, put the call out if people had space in their homes to let undocumented immigrants come live in their homes. I mean, it's getting wild now. And that's why you see a shift of the political landscape. And that's why even in Minnesota, they say Joe Biden only enjoys a slight lead over Trump. And I think the same is probably true for Amy
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any polls with your name in it. They just
course
been
not.
polling Joe Frazier, and then of course
Yeah.
he's getting the typical base 36%,
Right.
which is generally it's like the Neuberger standard. That's
No, it is interesting though, because I see they're propping up Joe Frazier, putting him on local media and everything. You're way more well known. You're a much bigger name, and you would think that if the media, I don't know why they're covering you up, because that should be the story. That should be headline news that former NBA player Royce White gets in this race because you're a big name. You're going to make some news.
I'm too dangerous.
I think so. I think that's why you're covered up.
I'm too
because,
dangerous. They know. Well, it's not a secret. They want to throw Steve in jail. Look,
Yeah.
who was it? I think it was the Washington Post, but it may have been. Maybe it was the Guardian. One of them said, I mean, it's all the same. The Guardian, Washington Post, what's the difference? But they said that Steve, that Bannon is the intellectual backbone of the entire nationalist populist movement around the world. And I agree. I think that he is. I think he's the real
He is one of
intellectual.
the generals.
He's
Right.
he's the real intellectual juice of the movement. And War Room is too. War Room is probably the most downloaded podcast from the conservative movement in the whole world right now on Apple. And so, I mean, I'm right there. I'm his understudy. And the reason I say that is because it's much better to keep me off of the microphone than to let me talk. Why? Because they know I'm way too reasonable.
Yeah.
That nothing I'm saying is actually extreme.
And you're too convincing.
They need to paint this movement, the America First movement, as extreme and crazy. But the more you let Bannon talk, the more you let a person like me talk, the more you give us FaceTime with the people, the more people start to go, well, we did used to be anti-war Democrats. Now why are we so hell-bent on fighting a war with Russia to a nuclear escalation? Who does that benefit?
I have to interrupt again with a Rumble rant. Brad says, where can we donate to Royce?
RoyceWhite.us. I
There we go.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you owed Brad money instead of him giving us money for that one. That was a good one.
Seeker, can I add one more? Seekers Unite says, to Brad's point, what top 3 R's Royce needs any help with? I'm not sure what he means. by that.
Areas, I think.
Oh, areas. Okay, that makes sense. I was trying to figure it out. So, well, yeah, what top 3 areas?
Well, let's get back to that in a second here. I want to show 2 clips, Dawson. Let's start with Kamala Harris on Drew Barrymore's show. This is the way, Biden and Kamala are on their interview tours, and they're getting some really huge scrutinized things here. Go ahead, let's listen to this one here, Drew Barrymore.
I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now.
Yeah.
But in our country, we need you to be mamala of the country.
There you go. I mean, tough, hard-hitting interviews that I don't know how she managed to make it through that one. Here,
Wasn't that the same show as that transgender Dylan Mulvaney?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Drew
the little
Barrymore
worship
on
of
the
that.
knee,
Yeah, that was crazy.
Here, now, this one's the most interesting to me. This is Joe Biden on Howard Stern. And, I come as a product of, hold on one second there, Dawson, 80s and the 90s, and Howard Stern was like the rebel rouser. He was the guy that was countercultural, putting it back into the establishment. I don't know.
Midgets fight. He had all
Yes,
kinds of fun
100%.
stuff.
I don't know if you've seen this one, Royce. You got to use your headset to get it. But
Let me
this
check.
is Howard Stern pressing a guy who right now is funding a proxy war in Ukraine, allowing the border to be invaded, increasing the money supply, all the bad ills of this administration. And this is how Howard Stern treats it. By the way, the only interview that Joe Biden's done in last 2 months.
For doing this today. I want to thank you for your compassion. The reason I'm so excited to talk to you was because I wanted to understand the tragedy in your life and how you dealt with it And you're the kind of leader I love, because we're lucky to have you in the Oval Office and serving as the father of the country. Because if you're a good father to your family, which you are, I know you'd be a good father to the country. And I want to thank you for providing a calming influence,
Look at him.
an organized administration post-COVID, getting that vaccine out. I remember what the world was like at that point, getting NATO, getting us to feel comfortable, standing up to Putin, the incredible large growth in the jobs, unemployment rate down. I'll give you your greatest hits. The lowest uninsured rate in history. 4 out of 5 Americans are covered for less than $10 a month. Knocking off a few ISIS leaders, cutting the emissions in half. I mean, you've always been an environmentalist. Even the marijuana reform laws, enough sitting there and fighting that battle. Respect for Marriage Act. What the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares if someone's gay? How is it affecting anybody?
Now watch
People in
this.
love
This is
good,
interesting.
right? Love is good.
My dad, we saw 2 men kissing one another in Rodney Square when I was going in to get a license. I looked at him and he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other.
That's it. That's how I look
I
at
mean,
it.
it's a show. What? This is theater at this point. That is a line he's been using for years now. Like, he never found this line before when he opposed gay marriage, as recent as, 2012 when he was running for presidency. But now he's found this line, and this is what he uses. And it's like that literally, he just has to do it. He's like robotic at this point. These are the interviews they're giving this guy.
Well, the good thing is that fewer and fewer people are believing Joe Biden, which is really, important. But fewer and fewer people are believing Howard Stern too.
Yeah.
His viewership's way down. The mainstream media viewership's way down, and they feel the footsteps behind them with that. They feel it creeping. That alternative media is on the rise, and because of that, they feel a sense of desperation to attach themselves or get closer to the status quo for survival. And that's how Howard Stern has become so milquetoast. I mean,
Right.
That's just completely. I mean, what he said was so party line
Yeah.
that he should be embarrassed. He should be embarrassed to even show his face, and his listeners should be embarrassed for him. And if they're not, they're all sellouts. And I have no problem in saying, look, I'm not trying to win over the people who would listen to Howard Stern and believe him.
Right.
I mean, I'll just tell you, if you want to be a slave, if you don't want to have a country and you want to be a serf, keep voting the way you're voting. It's not up to me. And that's at a point where if they want to prop up Joe Frazier in this party, if the local media wants to run some kabuki, theater of an election with, putting him on the local, who the local media? Who do they think they are? I know who you are.
Yeah.
I know what KSTP is and WCCO and KARE 11 and Fox.
Yeah.
They can't fool me. They're just an ancillary. They're just an extension of the mainstream. Star Tribune had a deep, long-standing relationship with Amy Klobuchar's father.
Right.
And so, yeah, of course, the whole mainstream media's best interest, because they know Amy's vulnerable. They know Amy's more vulnerable than Ilhan, because they have the CD5 is so heavily concentrated with Democrats. When you get the whole state into an election, they know it. They know what the danger is. That I can appeal and actually motivate even Republicans that have become disenfranchised with the Republican Party.
Royce, we've talked a little bit about the race issue. I want to bring this up here. Dawson, click on, let's see, this tweet on line F11. You're obviously following this Democrat senator in Minnesota who's decided to burglarize a elderly woman with Alzheimer's. Are you not aware of this?
No, I'm not aware of it.
Holy shit.
Tell me about it, please.
Oh, my God. Go to truthhurtsnews.com. It's the gift that keeps on giving. We found out last Monday that a Democrat senator, her name's Nicole Mitchell, was arrested with first-degree burglary. Now, remember, the Democrats have a one-person majority in the Minnesota Senate, so basically puts the whole Senate in stalemate.
Great.
She is arrested. She's held overnight. By the way, white woman from Woodbury. And she's held overnight, charged officially with first-degree burglary, which has a maximum penalty up to 20 years in prison. And on the way home, apparently from Becker County, she goes on Facebook and says, I just had an Alzheimer's sufferer in my family, and she was trying to sound like an angel. And when you square that with the police report and you square it with the 911 call which came out the next day, she's lying. She's clearly lying. And the Democrats are holding on to this seat because they don't want to see stalemate on all their policies, right? It's all politics. So they're literally saying they're using the old line that, basically she has due process rights, which, by the way, I don't disagree with that when it comes to law. They disagree with that because they passed red flag gun laws. But due process when it comes to law. But they shouldn't put the cart before the horse on this one. And so she still has voting rights. The race question here, I want to bring this up, and I put this on Twitter here.
Yeah.
John Thompson, and John Thompson was not a very good individual, but he was a state rep from St. Paul. Mm-hmm. And this is July 2021. And this is a quote from Tim Walz. The alleged acts, not convicted, the alleged acts of violence against multiple women outlined in these reports are seriously and deeply disturbing, Walz said in a statement. Minnesotans deserve representatives of the highest moral character who uphold our shared values. Representative Thompson can no longer effectively be that leader and should immediately resign. Then, in addition to Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, Speaker Melissa Hortman, Majority Leader Ryan Winkler, Minority Leader Susan Kent, nowadays it's not Susan Kent, and State DFL Party Chairman Ken Martin all called for Thompson's immediate resignation Saturday, sending out releases within minutes of one another. Also, Thompson's resignation was calling for resignation was Betty McCollum and a bunch of state legislators in congressional districts, including St. Paul. Is this systemic racism? Why call for the black guy to resign without due process?
This is the modus operandi of the white liberal structure. Mm-hmm. This is what Malcolm X been calling since the 60s. Mm. This is their whole MO. And John Thompson, look, you like him, you don't like him. He's got flaws. He's got problems. We all do. But the reason they really don't like John Thompson is because he was the guy on their side of the aisle who's saying all these Democrats are giving you false promises.
Yeah,
that was his platform over there.
And unfortunately, he just voted in lockstep with them. That's the problem.
Well, and
I was hoping that guy got
there was
real
a couple
more
of votes where he didn't go along with the establishment, but
rare.
It was rare.
And
it was rare.
That is, in my opinion, due to a lack of political acumen.
Right.
Or political fortitude and courage. Mm-hmm. But in general, he came in from the community saying, these people are lying to you.
Yeah.
He didn't come in running against Republicans. He didn't come in running. He came in saying Waltz and all of these people who are liberals keep promising you these things, and then they don't ever show up and deliver. Mm-hmm. So that's just a great example. I mean, the moral and what did they go after John? Was it a Me Too thing?
Well, it was serious sexual assault allegations, but at that point he wasn't convicted.
Give me a break.
Well, true. And
when are we gonna just talk about this with a full throat?
Yeah.
The Me Too movement? Are you kidding me? We're still doing Me Too.
Yeah, I don't know the details of that one.
Give me it doesn't even matter.
Right.
I mean, it really doesn't even matter unless there was evidence. Mm-hmm. And this is where we got to get clear in the conservative movement. Rule of law, innocent till proven guilty. All of these things we have let slide. Mm-hmm. When it's been advantageous. And guess who it's aimed at now? Donald J. Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Me Too, Donald Trump.
It turned out a lot of high-powered leftists went down, though. Harvey Weinstein, obviously, Al Franken.
Sacrificial lambs.
Yeah, Al Franken in particular,
Sacrificial lambs for the means justifies, the end justifies the means.
Right.
They got to make it look somewhat. And let's not be thinking that there wasn't something that Al Franken had going on internally that wasn't the real motive for why they went after him. Yeah. Just because they're on the same side don't mean that there's no honor amongst thieves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The people on your same side of the line will hack you down just as quick as your enemies.
Go to the other tweet here, Dawson. This is line F13. This is Nicole Mitchell's on the Senate floor yesterday. This is a pretty big story because obviously she was not even voting before this. Mm-hmm. This is from Leftists of Minnesota. Click on that picture there. That's her in an embrace with soon to be, one would assume, the congresswoman from CD3. So that is
Morrison.
Kelly Morrison. Mm-hmm. And then and there's her with Aaron McQuaid, as if
I think there were more hugs than that too. So it was all around on the Senate floor. It's ridiculous that Nicole Mitchell is being treated that way, and especially because we're saying innocent until proven guilty, but she admitted her guilt. She admitted it when she was in the house when she said, I'm not supposed to be there.
No, you didn't tell me that.
She's actually a lawyer.
Right, she's a lawyer.
She's got a law degree.
Her guilt to the cops.
And she gets Mirandized, and the first thing she says is, I know I did something bad. I was like, oh, my God.
Wait. You guys got to tell me what exactly she did.
Yeah, first degree, so she broke into the house.
No, but what did she do really?
Her stepmother's house.
Okay.
She left Woodbury at 1 a.m. in the morning, broke into her stepmother's house in the Detroit Lakes at about 4:30-ish. her stepmother doesn't know that this is her. Apparently broke into the basement window, and it's a small basement window. Went up to the bedroom where her stepmother was sleeping. Her stepmother's on the phone with 911, says that she tripped over the man because she thought it was a man that was in her house trying to get something under her bed while she was sleeping. So then the police come, and by 4:45, the police they find her because she fled to the basement to hide. They find her, arrest her, detain her, and start the puzzle of what was going on. And it sounds like her father, who died about a year beforehand, the state went all to the stepmother. And so she wanted some of the items, one being a laptop, which wasn't hers. She said ashes, but apparently she already had ashes. A lot of the story is fuzzy. All we know is she broke into the house, and her stepmother was there, was not welcomed, and she actually stole items, which we read the statute on the show last week is first-degree burglary. Now, she's not going to get 20 years, but she has to get at least a minimum of 6 months, which is what it says in the statute. Long story short, how the hell is this woman a senator? And even more importantly, the Democrats that are always talking about systemic racism, they call for John Thompson to resign off allegations. And this is even more damning right here. And by the way, probably lied.
Was there any? I didn't follow the John Thompson thing. I know John from the neighborhood. Was there any evidence in his case about the allegations?
Well, I know he ended up in court. I really don't remember, to be honest with you.
Well, if
that guy had lots of problems.
If he would have got convicted and there was evidence, we probably would have heard about it.
Yeah, fair. Or they just
they'd have brought. Nah, they probably would have brought that
because he didn't win the prize. But he didn't. Well, this happened after he was in office.
Even still.
Well, fair. Yeah.
If there was real evidence that he was a heinous sexual predator, promise you that Cara Levin would have made sure to mention it, or the Star Trib or somebody.
Oh yeah.
One other thing before we sign off here, real quick, and then we could talk about a little bit of this in the OT. If you can go to thetruthhurts.com, there, Dawson on line 13. Michelle Fishbach failed to get the endorsement in CD7.
Amen.
That's a pretty big story when Emmer's own. Now, it turns out neither did Steve Boyd. She was leading him by roughly 10 percentage points. And as we said on this show many times, it probably came down to the Otter Tail County delegates, which did not get seated at that convention. And that 10% faction probably would have all gone to Steve Boyd. So there's a chance Steve Boyd would have won that endorsement had David had not taken his big hand and stop that from happening. Now, CD2, as we were talking about before, Tom Emmer backed Joe Tyreb. Is that how you say it? Tayreb. Lost 24% to, 74% or something like
74 to 26, yeah.
To Taylor Rahm. So, and so Emmer, bad weekend for Tom Emmer. Some might call him a globalist rhino. I don't know.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
By the way, I also saw on your recent show about talking about how Tom Emmer's, Trump's probably going to endorse your opponent, but you understand the gimmick, the infrastructure around him. That's what's going on here. Tom Emmer now is running the Trump re-election campaign in Minnesota. The guy that was called the globalist rhino by Donald Trump himself is now running the campaign in Minnesota. You know, in many regards,
who's running the campaign in Minnesota?
You didn't know this? Tom Emmer is in charge of the Trump campaign.
Supposedly, right. Trump called him the Trump campaign chair of Minnesota. You know, I think what it really is I think that Trump has a new rule for candidates where if they're using his likeness or his endorsement, that they owe him a cut of that they owe him a cut of the donations that they get. So I think that he's using Emmer for the money is what it really is.
All right, let's tackle that in the OT. We'll get real with Royce White here. Thank you to our sponsors today. Alpine Cabinetry in East St. Cloud, Warren Wessel Realty. If you're buying or selling a home, give Warren a call. By the way, our sponsors think like us. You know, we don't just have any random sponsors that want to be on the show. They have to believe in the things that we believe in, and that's Warren Wessel. And also John Galt Mortgage Company. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com. If you aren't a subscriber, go right on Rumble and click join, and then you can be part of this after show. We'll be with you guys that are subscribers or new subscribers on Locals in about 1 minute. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be back on Thursday. Take care.